folks, Mrs. Casler here. I just want to throw a little review at you on the Pythagorean theorem. This is basically an introduction. So if you have already been working the Pythagorean theorem, this is going to remind you of what you probably already know, but that's good because it seems like the last time we were in school was like a lifetime ago. And if you are just starting to work in the Pythagorean theorem, hopefully this will get you started off on the right foot. So when we have been talking about triangles up until now in math, we have been talking about how to find the angle measures. We know that the three angles of a triangle add up to 180 degrees. Now, with Pythagorean theorem, we are talking about finding the lengths of the sides of a triangle. And it's only a very special triangle. We're only talking about a right triangle. Really important to remember, okay? So what I have for you in front of you on the screen now is the diagram of a right triangle. We know it's a right triangle because number one, the problem will tell us it's a right triangle, or number two, you'll see this little box in the corner. That means that is the right angle, okay? So when you see that box, you know that that angle measures 90 degrees, okay? If you look at that triangle, there are two sides that are adjacent or come off of that right angle. When we're talking the Pythagorean theorem, they're always going to be labeled A and B, and they are called the legs, two legs. So I'll put those words right down there, always A and B. And then there's a very special side. If you take a line, an arrow up from that right angle, turn it into an arrow here, little arrowhead. It'll be pointing to a very special side, and that's always labeled as C, and that's called the hypotenuse. Not the hippopotamus, but the hypotenuse. Okay? So that's what you need to know about a right triangle. You've got your two legs that are adjacent to your right angle, and you've got your hypotenuse. Your hypotenuse, important to know, is always, 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 without exception, the longest side. You need to remember that. The hypotenuse, or C, is always the longest side. Okay, next screen. A little bit of review of what we just talked about, because I'm talking really fast to try to get this done in 5 minutes. Okay, we're talking about the Pythagorean theorem. The Pythagorean theorem tells us how we measure the third side of a right triangle. Wait a minute, I got to turn my coffee water off. Okay. The formula, which we're going to use in the next video I do, is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now, if you'll remember, the c is the hypotenuse. The c is always the longest side, and the a and b are the measurements of the two sides that come out of that right triangle. Okay, those two legs. A right triangle is a triangle that has one angle that measures 90 degrees. There can't be two angles that measure 90 degrees. There can only be one. The hypotenuse is the side that is opposite of the right angle. Remember that arrow we drew? And it went up? Right here. It is the longest, always the longest. I don't know what's wrong with my stylus. And in addition to that, you have the hypotenuse, and then you have the two legs which come out of that right angle. Okay, that's vocabulary for the Pythagorean theorem in a nutshell. Pythagorean theorem part 2 is going to be how to do it. Take care. How do I turn it off? Come on. I'm dying here.